Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate you inviting me. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Um, this is very awkward for me, as I'm sure it is for you. But I appreciate the opportunity to do anything in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so it was when Waylon invited me, it was before any of us knew anything about the COVID-19 and or Zoom or anything like that. So we're all having to learn. But I'm happy to hear sitting in my dining room. I will apologize to those of you at the Primary Purpose group that I'm not there in person. One thing I've learned is this Zoom is making us lazy, or making me lazy, and so it would be nice to you in person. But at 8 o'clock, when this is over with, I'm going to be happy that I'm in Rocky Mount. I'll go ahead and admit that to you. But again, my name is Kevin Lewis. I'm an alcoholic, and my sobriety birthday is March 17, 2001. And I am a member of the Came to Believe group in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And that's the only home group I've ever had. The group is such a good group. They named a piece of AA literature after us, Came to Believe. That's a joke my sober buddy Paige likes to tell. But anyway, our group is similar to your group. We're a Three Legacy group. We meet 2 times a week on Tuesdays and Fridays at St. Paul United Methodist Church in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. We studied the big book like the first 3 Tuesdays. We go all the way through it. And we're almost at the end of it. It takes over 2 years to get through the big book in our home group. And so we're about to start back over at the very beginning. We also study a tradition one Tuesday a month. So we cover all 12 traditions in a year's time. And when we have we in our group using AA conference approved literature. We also meet on Friday night. The first Friday of each month, we study a step out of the 12 and 12. So we cover 12 steps in a year's time. The following Friday chooses a reading or topic out of AA conference approved literature. The last Friday of each month is our only open meeting. We have an open speaker meeting, just like we're doing here tonight, except we do it on the last Friday of the month. Before this COVID pandemic, we were known for having world-class refreshments at our last Friday of the month speaker meeting. We had a very good. Everybody left hungry, and we always have a great speaker at our last Friday of the month open speaker meeting. And we still have the great speaker. We just don't have the food to go along with it temporarily. We're very fortunate and blessed that some AA groups have lost their meeting spaces during this pandemic. We've been allowed. We're the only thing going on at the church we meet at is AA on Tuesdays and Friday nights. There's no other church activities being allowed in that facility, and so we're socially distancing and keeping the attendance down to 10. And we've not missed a live home group meeting, and then we have Zoom attendance that's very good as well. So AA is still going on in Rocky Mount, and we're still reaching the newcomer. In fact, I'm proud to report that I think we've got about 4 newcomers have joined our group in the last few weeks, which is probably more than we had before the pandemic. So I'm proud that because that was one of my concerns is that with meetings shuttering and things that still suffering alcoholic their way to us, because I know my own history, and if I had I don't know what would have happened if we'd have been in the midst of a pandemic at the time I found my way to Alcoholics Anonymous. But I'll tell you that I'm from Eastern North Carolina, if you hadn't guessed, but I'm not from Rocky Mount originally. But I was raised in a small town in a good family. We were a church-going family. I understand there's a lot of at least maybe heavy drinking. I don't know if they were alcoholics. Family tree, if you will. I know my own father, I understand, was a heavy drinker until I was 2 years old. I'm the youngest of 3 children. And I've heard, but at age 2, my father had a spiritual experience in a church and never drank again. And you know that works great for the ones that it works great for. However, you know, I was raised going to church. I joke that, you know, that in my story, my drug problem was I was being drugged to church, drugged Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. Went to church every time the doors were open. And that didn't stop me from drinking. And when I started drinking, it didn't help me to quit drinking. I was involved at the time I came into AA. I was unchurched. There was a time in a church. And I wasn't qualified for that office. You know, there was nothing spiritual about my experience with a church. I was more concerned about, you know, how much was in the offering plate and how much was the preacher being paid. You know, it just didn't, it wasn't anything spiritual for me at that time. You know, I can't tell you, I really don't remember my first drink. I think I was probably about 15 years old, and it was probably something like Boone's Farm wine. Some friends of mine got hold of some, and that was really the first drink that I remember. And I don't remember anything spectacular about it, but pretty soon thereafter, I got a driver's license, and I was able to go places. I got a job at a grocery store, and the grocery store I got a job at, the after hours, some of the older ones and the meat department people got together back there in the meat department after the meat department closed, and they drank, and they let us younger ones come back there and drink with them. And so I learned early on that I like drinking. I like the way, you know, in the big book where it says we like the effect produced by alcohol, I could immediately identify with that when I first heard that, because that was my experience. And you know, a lot of people say that they didn't really mean to get drunk. Now, early on, I drank to get drunk. You know, that's what I wanted to do. People say they drank because they like the taste of it and whatnot. I used to tell them, you know, I like the taste of Pepsi Cola, but I ain't never sat down and drank 6 of them. You know, I drank to get drunk. So, you know, I didn't drink every day. I couldn't drink as a young person. I couldn't drink every day. I didn't have the money or the ability. But I drank, you know, as much as I could shortly after I started drinking. In fact, I started having some negative consequences. I was 17 years old, and I was down at the Outer Banks. And I was coming off of the Ocracoke Ferry, where I had been drinking all day before getting on the ferry and drinking the whole time on the ferry. Got across the island of Ocracoke, took the other little ferry over to Hatteras Island, and was, I don't know, a mile or 2 down from the ferry before they got me. And I was 17 years old, had just graduated from high school. And I found myself being put in the little, I don't even know if they still have it. It's in Buxton, North Carolina, is the name of the little town. It's like a little 3-cell Andy Griffith's kind of jail, you know. I reckon I was the oldest that night. The reason they put me in jail is they said the magistrate was fishing. He'd be in the morning. So, and you know, that was not going that fall. Spending the night in jail and getting in trouble, was not in my plan for my life. And that was the first time really that I remember swearing off. And that's something that I did a lot over the next 20 years of drinking is swearing off alcohol. There's another part in the big book where it talks about how we would swear it off, with or without sacred oath, and all the things that we did to try to quit drinking. That was like somebody knew my story before I ever came in, because that's exactly, what happened to me and what I did. But, I don't know how long that I didn't drink. I don't know if I drank the rest of that summer or not. But I do remember going off to college that fall, and the first day, somebody in my dorm came up and wanted to know if I wanted to go get some beer. And I immediately said yes. And that started another thing that I've noticed over the next 20 years is that I could have negative consequences, but shortly afterwards I could forget all about it. And the promises that I would make and the trouble that I was getting into, I just sort of forgot about it, and it was time to drink again. And I would go a while and it maybe not have negative consequences until I did. And it was just, it really was a vicious cycle in my experience. But I got through. I was able to get through college. I had a good time drinking. I had a lot of fun drinking, but there was also a lot of negative consequences. Wondering, waking up, where are you? What have you done? Where have you been? Did I something is going to come back on me? Did I steal something from somebody? Did I not pay for something somewhere? It could be anything, and it usually was something. But I would it would be soon forgotten. Whatever those consequences were. I was bad for if I was at a party at your house, I would probably burn something with a cigarette. It was just. I was very inconsiderate. You talking about selfishness and self-centeredness. That was me, and I didn't know it. If you'd have asked me, this was my experience when I came into AA. People were talking about selfishness and self-centeredness, and I'm like, well, that ain't me. I felt like I was a very generous person, and I couldn't see myself that way. But I got through college, and I moved to Raleigh, and I worked in Raleigh for a couple of years, and my drinking was I was able to drink more. I'll tell you this. I was 50 years old before I paid off. And my experience with the student loan people is that they were happy to loan me beer and cigarette money. I borrowed more money than I needed. I don't know if it's that way for children today going to school, but I had a lifestyle, from my point of view, and they loaned me money to keep it up, So I worked for a couple of years, and was getting into some trouble. Relationships and people and friends. I was one of these that the people that I drank with got on me about my drinking. I don't know if that was any of y'all's experience or not, but the people that I drank with were getting on me. And, I tried to seek out people to drink with that like to drink like I did. And it didn't seem to ever be much of a problem to find those people. We almost have magnets to one another. It was my experience. But after a couple of years, I decided I was going to go back to school and get a graduate degree. And so I did. I went back to school. I got another DWI during that period of time. But by this time, I didn't even swear off drinking after that second DWI. I remember my attitude was good. Somebody else can do the driving now. And but that didn't stop. I kept on drinking and driving. I was very DWIs over the years, but it didn't really slow me down a whole lot, getting in more trouble. I remember that I was going to school in a small sort of conservative Christian college that was in a dry county. And when I got that DWI in school, the dean called me to his office. And, if you ever seen the movie Animal House, it was like they put me on double secret probation. It was, they knew everything that was going on that campus. But really, that's I didn't have a whole lot of negative consequences. They got on me a little bit, but I just kept on doing what I was doing. I won't flunking. Don't know why. I'll tell you this story. My first semester, my grades were not quite as good as I had wanted them to be. So I made a almost like a New Year's resolution. When I went back for the second semester in January, I was going to stop drinking during the week. That's that would have been progress, for me. We used to hit the local tavern scene hard about Wednesday night. And so I decided I won't go. And my sober buddy Paige says that ever since he's quit drinking, nobody from the bars have ever called and wanted to know where he was. Well, I missed one Wednesday night and they were calling for me and wanted to know where I was. And so that didn't last long either. But I was able to get through school, even with that other DWI. I was able to graduate and everything, and got a job back in my hometown, working as a lawyer. And so, and I went to work with a group of men that, working 5 o'clock, they would open the bottle. They kept some liquor in the kitchen, and we'd wait to 5 o'clock, and we would, socialize and have a drink. A few years into my working there, that evolved into it's 5 o'clock somewhere. We didn't necessarily have to wait to 5 o'clock to start drinking. The first year that I worked there, we had this was one of the senior partners' homes, and now this was a small. I think there was 6 of us all together, and had the wives and the spouses and of the people that worked there, and we had this Christmas party at these people's house, and I don't know exactly what happened. I know I got drunk, and I got mouthy with one of them's wife, and I don't even like thinking about this. All these years ago, I don't even like thinking about it, and Lord only knows what I said. Was crying, and she was like, "They're gonna fire you." And that's exactly what she said, that they're gonna fire you. And I don't even know. She didn't tell me all what was said, but I went down to the post office that Saturday, and I don't know how your post office there is in Southern Pines, but in Ahoskie, North Carolina, there's one way in and one way out. And as I got the mail and I turned around, the guy whose house we were at and whose the night before was walking in, and I'm sitting there thinking, "Oh my God!" And so we met there in the post office, and I'm sure I was kind of sheepish, and because I was hung over anyway. And I guess he said hello, and I said, well, Mr. Jenkins, I understand I owe you an apology. And he said, no, that was the alcohol, and not another thing was ever said about that. And so I had a lot of breaks from things like that where I maybe should have had more serious consequences than what I did. But do you think I learned from them? No, I didn't learn from them. It was almost a joke in that office that about every other year I wouldn't Christmas, and then the next year I'd get brave enough to drink, and then something else would probably happen. In fact, one of the head was the office Christmas party, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I was able to work and do my job, and I didn't have a happy marriage, but I thought we had a nice home, and we ended up having a daughter. I felt like I was a good provider, and I don't know where I got it from, but I thought if I was a good provider, that was all I had to do, and then I could do what I wanted to. And but that's just more of that selfishness and self-centeredness. It's all about me. And so there came an opportunity that I had to move. The firm had opened a branch office, and a couple of the guys had already moved over to Rocky Mount. And so after my daughter was born, my wife and I, we just all decided we moved to Rocky, a place and whatnot. And it was some of that too, I've come to believe, was a joke. Just so many problems with people and drinking, and that I just needed to get away. And I remember the guys that I had worked with that were already in Rocky Mount. We sat down and they had a talk with me, and I drank with these guys. I've known them all my life, and they were, at least when they were around me, they were heavy drinkers. I'm not going to label them alcoholics, but they could drink as much as I could when we were together. I can promise you that. But they said, listen, when you move over here to Rocky Mount, we ain't going to carry on like we used to now. Things need to be different. And so I said, oh yeah, that's right. So I moved to Rocky Mount, and but I brought property with me, and I moved over. We moved here in January of 2000. And I say again, my sobriety date is March 17, 2001, and so that last year of my drinking was kind of spree drinking, if you will. My wife was on me, some kind of hard about not drinking. I would do things like, if I had, here's one example that I remember because of the events that transpired that day. I had depositions or something in Durham one afternoon at like 2:00. And so what I would do is I would say, well, I've got something in Durham early the next morning, so I'm going to have to go out of town and spend the night. So that's what I did. I left, drove to Durham, and went out and partied, drank just drank without restraint. And I remember particularly this day, the maid was coming in there to run me out because it was like 12:00, and I'm like, Lord, I got to get a shower and get out of here and get dressed and, be over here at 2:00. And so I hurried up and got on over there. And, everybody was talking about, what had happened that day. And I'm like, yeah, that's terrible. And I had no clue what it was, but what it ended up being, it was the day that there had been a bombing of the Oklahoma City courthouse. Y'all probably remember that. I'm sometime in the 90s, but I was completely oblivious to it, and that probably happened to somebody on 9/11. Anytime something has happened, if you drank like I drank, you just fumbled through life learning about things, I suppose. But that's what I would do. I would go any chance I could get to be somewhere where I could drink without restraint. That's what I would do. And so that last year of my drinking, there were several sprees where I would drink, and there would be some negative consequences. And the next day I would be crying, and I would be promising, and I would be begging, I'm never going to do it again. I always thought I was kind of a pessimist, but I've come to believe that I must really be an optimist, because I really thought it was going to be different. After 20 years of a vicious cycle, you would think that somebody of the least bit intelligence would be able to perceive that, it's not going to be different. I first heard y'all in AA telling me that, it's the first drink that gets you drunk. But that was crazy. I'm like, I don't understand. I couldn't grasp that. Right. I did a lot of things. I never went to a treatment center. I didn't know anything about that, but I know I tried a lot of stuff, just like in the big book where it says, I'm going to lay off the liquor and just drink beer or just drink wine. I'm going to count my drinks. And I read that in the Reader's Digest. Somebody had if you count your drinks, I think they wanted you to stop at 3. I went like 8. And, if I could just pace myself and get to 8, everything would be just fine. I'm like, my daddy used to say if he could smoke 1 pack of cigarettes a day, he'd have never quit smoking. And that's kind of how I was. If I could stop at 8 drinks, I'd have never quit drinking, But I couldn't. And invariably, I would have some of those negative consequences, and I would swear it off again. And there would come a period of time where I would this feeling would come over me that I'm a grown man. I can have a drink if I want one, and I would get one. And I remember another time that there was this nice little bar about a block or 2 from my office, and it was a nice little place to go in there and get a drink and after work and whatnot. And I remember going there after work with the guys, and we had like 2 beers and left. And I remember coming home. Now this was in the last year of my drinking. I remember coming home, and I was expecting a pat on the back because I have come home and I ain't tore up from the floor up. I was expecting my wife to be polishing my halo because of what a good husband that I am, and she's lucky to have me. And she was furious with me, and I couldn't understand why at the time. I know now is that she saw what was coming. She knew that it won that night, but the next night that I go, I'm not coming home that night, or I'm coming home drunk and like a bull in a china shop. I remember another time in that last year. We had gone to something together, and my mother. We had my daughter was born in '99, so this would have been sometime in late 2000. And my mother came and stayed at our house to keep the baby, so we could go out, and so that's what we did. Except I didn't come home with her. I got drunk. And I got out of line, and I don't even know how I got back to my house that night, but the doors were locked, and I didn't have any keys, and I ended up sleeping in the car. that night. And remember, in the next morning, they got me in the house, and I remember waking up in the guest room bed. And my mother was there, and I'm waking up in the guest room bed, and I asked my mom, I'm like, well, where did you sleep? Because that's where she was supposed to be sleeping. Well, she had already slept all night before they let me come in and get into bed, you know. But anyway, I remember another night. This was the last office Christmas party. I'll tell that story. And I'm really too much of a drunkalog here tonight, but the office Christmas party was back in a Hosky, which was the home office, and so we had. This might have been the night that I ended up sleeping in the car. This might have been the night because we had a van, and my designated driver for the Rocky Mount office staff drove us over to a hospital, and we had this Christmas party over there. And another one of my tricks is, when I got the sense that the party was about to be over with, or that y'all were about to leave, I'd get missing. I would dodge you. I would hide somewhere and drink and put drinks in my pocket. I was just, it's all about me. And so they finally got me in the van, and I had, this is another thing I don't like remembering this night either, because I can remember bits and pieces of it, but I know that we had my partners and staff in the back of that van. I'm in the front, she's driving, and the whole hour ride back over here, I'm just extremely ugly verbally to my wife. And I finally had her take me to a bar and put me out at a bar. And here she's got the other people from my office, I'm sure, are mortified, and it's terrible. And so, but anyway, that night, if that's the same night, I remember starting to walk home, and a cop picked me up and took me home. They didn't take me to jail, they took me home. But anyway, that was probably that drunk was be heading to AA, because that next day I did what I always did. I apologized, and I was crying and begging, and I think that was the night that my mama was there and witnessed all that. I remember she said, "I don't know why you want to sit up all night and drink yourself into a stupor." She just didn't understand. After I came in AA, I know she was happy for me to be in AA, but I remember her saying, "Well, I didn't think he was that bad. Your mama's always going to see the good in you, I reckon." But anyway, I did drink for a couple of months, and then I had another situation where I drank one or two, and my wife was upset with me, and I thought she ought to have been pleased with me because I stopped. She knew what was coming. The last week or so, 2 weeks before I came into AA, I did one of those going out of town. I went to I took a training class that lasted from Wednesday to Sunday, and you had to get in 40 hours of class during those days. And there was another guy from Rocky Mount taking the same class that I took. I went, got a hotel, got drunk every night. He drove back and forth, had dinner with his family every night, slept in the bed with his wife every night. But that's not what I did. I looked at it as an opportunity to do what Kevin wanted to do, and that was get somewhere where he could drink without restraint. And I did good in that class. I thought drinking made me do better. But anyway, I came home from that, and my wife knew what I was doing. I thought I had everybody fooled. And that's when she just told me, she said, look, I can't live like this anymore. And I'm not going to, we've got this baby in this house, and I'm not going to raise this child in this house with a drunk. And I did what I always did. I cried and I begged and I promised and I swore I won't ever going to do it again. But I sensed that something was different this time. And so I got her to agree to let's go to a marriage counsel. And so that's what we did. And, he met with us separately and met with us together. And I don't know what he suggested for her. But when it was my turn, he asked me, had I considered going to Alcoholics Anonymous? And he gave me a list of meetings. This was on a Monday night. And he gave me a list of meetings. And so I went home, and the next day was Tuesday. And I decided that if I'm going to save my marriage, I loved my wife, and I wanted to keep our family together. I was also worried about, what the financial consequences of a divorce, and I was tore up because I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew that it was serious this time. But that next day, on that Tuesday, which was, I think, the first Tuesday in April of 2001, I got that list out, and there was a meeting at 5:00 that day, and I went to that meeting first, and I chickened out. I drove through the parking lot and I chickened out and went on home. And I got to having second thoughts that, I better do what this man has suggested for me to do. And so for some reason, I was worried about somebody was going to see me that knew me. And, what I know now, if somebody had seen me going to an AA meeting, they would have said, well, good, good for him. He needs it if anybody needs it, But I was worried about somebody seeing me because I didn't know a thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't even really think I was an alcoholic. I knew I had problems arising from drinking, but I didn't know what an alcoholic was. In my mind, an alcoholic lived under a bridge. I had a home, as a friend of mine in AA says, I had a piece of car, and I had some money in the bank, and I had a house. And, I wasn't, that wasn't me. I wasn't an alcoholic. So anyway, I went to this second meeting that night, which was the Came to Believe group, and walked in, and Lord, the first person I saw that, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I didn't know he was an alcoholic, and I don't reckon he didn't know, he didn't know I was, and because I just knew him professionally, didn't know him personally. And that ended up being the best thing that could have happened to me was showing up at that meeting at that time. And that meeting was about that group was about 2 years old. In fact, we just celebrated the 21st anniversary of the Came to Believe group. And so that meeting was 2 years old. It took them about 2 years to go through the big book back then, because I remember, and I don't know how I remember that. My first meeting, they read the doctor's opinion. So I came in at the right time. I'm right in the beginning of the big book. And there was somebody there that I knew, and that actually made things better. And so, but I really wasn't there to get sober. I was there to repair my family situation. And so I did a lot of listening, and I would say I'm an alcoholic because that's what y'all would say. And, I was almost like the guys that are going in there and getting the papers signed. I was going, to make that marriage counselor happy, which I thought that's what I could do, and repair the marital relationship and whatnot. I had my mother-in-law was on my side initially. I remember her telling my wife that she needed to do what we needed to do to fix things, and so I just felt like everything was going to be okay, and I was on it, and I'm sort of glad that I had that. If I had known how it was going to turn out, I probably wouldn't have stuck with it, you know. But I thought everything was going to get back together. But, you know, I know now that it was too far gone. And it was probably best that we part. But it took me a long time to realize that. And when I got to be realizing that, you know, I'm coming to AA and I'm listening to AA and I'm saying I'm an alcoholic, but really what I'm doing is I'm pour me in my situation. And, you know, I won't, you know, why won't, you know, she's doing me wrong. And that guy that I knew became my sponsor. And he said, he suggested to me to pray for her happiness. And I was offended at that suggestion, you know, because, you know, he's my sponsor. He's supposed to be helping me, you know. How about let's praying for my happiness, you know? And I, you know, I resisted that. And, you know, for several months, you know, I'm coming to AA and I'm not drinking, but I'm a long ways from being sober. And I'm praying for me. I always would pray, even when I was drinking, you know, I was an expert at the foxhole prayers. And that's what I knew to do. And so, but there did come a time when I started, I guess it's when I became teachable. And I started taking some suggestions. And I actually started praying for that wife. And I came to realize that, well, you know, that we're not getting back together. And, you know, we've got to work together as parents. And by this time I'm in AA, I'm beginning to agree that, yes, I'm an alcoholic. I'm starting to work some steps. I'm doing more than just showing up at, you know, right at 7:00 and leaving just as soon as the meeting's over with. You know, I started like, you know, we like to come early and stay late. You know, we like to fellowship after the meeting. You know, in my experience, that's been every bit as important as what goes on in the meeting is what goes on outside the meeting. I got introduced to service work going into taking a meeting into the prisons. I didn't want to do that, but that's what the people that I looked up to and respected in Alcoholics Anonymous were doing. So I began doing it, and you know, and that's just in my experience, it's been an example of you know, you got to give it away to keep it. You know, you got to be willing to help another alcoholic. And here we are during this, you know, pandemic time. You know, in fact, was right when all this was getting started. We had the CFC, and I'm sure a lot of y'all were there in Southern Pines in mid-March. And we've not been, since that time, we've not been allowed back into the prisons. That's been 3 months. And there's no time soon on the horizon that we're going to be able to get back in there. And it's not just AA, it's any, you know, volunteer, whether it be religious or NA or anything that serves those inmates has been completely cut off. You know, at least those of us, you know, outside have Zoom. You know, even if you find yourself in a position where you're not able to go to a meeting, you can still stay plugged with your home group or with other groups even on Zoom. And one newcomer in our home group that's never been to the actual meet, she's only been on Zoom, and she's joined our group on Zoom. And so it's you know, I'm very grateful that we're here for the still suffering alcoholic, just like they were here for me when I came in. And so I can remember being introduced to a lot of good speakers as a newcomer in Alcoholics Anonymous, particularly since I don't know if he's on the Zoom meeting or not, but probably not. But I remember your home group, Wallace. The first time I heard Wallace speak, I can just remember thinking, my God, I left out of that meeting with my jaw down on the floor. I had never heard a story exactly like that. I had heard some good speakers before that, but maybe I just wasn't in the right place to hear it. But when I heard Wallace, that was sort of the time frame when things were starting to change for me in AA. I can remember doing the third step prayer with my sponsor on our knees, and that was really a spiritual experience for me. I mean, that I can things started changing along that time for me, and it had to do with taking advice of a sponsor, praying for somebody else, getting involved in the home group and service work. Those are the things that I learned, and I'm just very fortunate to have come into an AA group that taught me those things, and now that was in 2001, and here we are 20, and I'm still trying to do the things that y'all suggested for me to do. We're still, once it opens back up, hoping that it'll open back up, we're going to take our meeting back into the prisons again. We're going to start being able to go to district meetings and spring assemblies, and we're even missing out on the international this year. But those things, Lord willing, will be coming back. And all those things have just been a tremendous blessing to my sobriety. I remember the first time that I heard it's on page 99 in the big book, and it says, "Let no alcoholic say he cannot recover unless he has his family back." That went through me like a knife through hot butter, because that's what I was in AA for, was to get my family back. And that has ended up being so true, in my experiences. I didn't get my family back, but what AA allowed me to do was allowed me to be a sober parent. It allowed me to be a sober co-parent with an ex-spouse, and I think we did a pretty good job with our daughter. In fact, my daughter's rising senior in college now. And for several years, she was our babysitter in our home group. We offer babysitting at that time during the speaker meeting. And so AA has helped me raise a child. And so I'm very grateful for that. So, I told you earlier that, I had been a deacon in a church, but I didn't have anything spiritual. By the time I came into AA, I wasn't even a member of a church, and so AA has allowed me to be not only to be a good parent, it's allowed me to be a church member. It's allowed me to be a better employer. It's a way of life, and we're in the midst of some unusual times. And there's a lot of things going on that are frightening, and folks don't know, what's going to happen. But I can tell you, I've ceased fighting anything and anybody. I don't have to obsess over current events or things that's going on in my community or this pandemic, and I don't have to drink over it. So anyway, thank you for having me. I appreciate you letting me be sober with you tonight. Thank you.